the cloud.
Record on the cloud.
Yeah, wonder where that'll go. Thank you, Jeff, for the reminder. And welcome everyone again to the presentation on secrets for a successful resume. Excellent. So we just asked the question, if you give out your resume to 5 different people, you could get a lot of responses back. So thank you for playing along with that opening question. And by way of background, again, my name is Brickell, and I'm a certified professional career coach. And I worked for over 30 years at EDS, which was acquired by HP, did a variety of roles, and I was a hiring manager throughout my time there, and I taught other hiring managers about behavioral interviewing and performed a variety of different roles, including training and development and delivering webinars. And also when I retired from HP in 2012, it was after the Great Recession, I felt a calling to learn more about the recruiting industry. So ultimately, I could become a career coach and help people find jobs. And that's where my career has led me. And during that time, I spent 6 years working as a recruiter, first at one of the major worldwide staffing agencies. I learned from the best. And then I was recruited to work for a former EDS leader and did some corporate recruiting and also training and development. And then also recently I worked at Next Step Recruiting, which is a wonderful staffing firm in the Dallas area. And then I retired about a year ago, January. And since that time, I've been devoting my time to the PIT crew every week and then doing career coaching work. So I have agency and corporate recruiting experience. So when you hear my perspective that I'm sharing about resumes, I'll be sharing my perspective based on looking at resumes from a hiring manager perspective, but also as a recruiter and presenting resumes to hiring managers. And I've placed candidates in a variety of roles: IT, accounting, finance, HR, project management, and I've worked in a variety of industries. And I love working for the PIT crew every week. And as I mentioned, I'm a certified professional career coach. And to get the certification, I went through a 12-month training program, but I did it faster than that. And then I had to do a meeting with the director of the program for the Professional Association for Resume Writers and Career Coaches. And then I took a 70-question essay test and passed that test to get a certification. But it was a fun process for me. Our agenda for today. And today we will be covering a lot of content, and we will give time at the end for questions. However, if through the presentation, if you have a burning question you need to ask right then, you're welcome to go into the chat box and I'll be monitoring that for questions, or you can raise your hand. I'll try to monitor that, but we have so many people, it's a little hard to monitor that. The chat box is probably best, and we will give time for questions at the end. So we'll do a little opening discussion question in a moment, and then I'll share with you some information about what you need to know about recruiters, actually some benefits of working with recruiters based on my experience. We'll talk about applicant tracking systems. And before we talk about full-blown resumes, we'll spend a moment talking about one-page biographies as well. We'll talk about general characteristics of good resumes and what I learned in my certification program about their guidance for resumes. And then we'll talk through key components of a resume. And the format I'm using is one I've kind of built over years based on feedback from hiring managers. And also it's very similar to the format they teach in the certification program. And also it's very similar to the format that's taught in the career transition workshop, which is taught in the Dallas area quarterly. So it's all a very familiar looking format that hiring managers are very used to looking at. And then also I'm going to give one of my career coaching tips, a little off topic at the end of the presentation. Once we've talked about resumes and you're applying for jobs, I'm going to share a couple tips about how to get noticed when you're applying for a job so you can get that interview, because you really get a job once you get that interview. And then we'll do a summary and wrap up and questions. And somebody asked me, what's the prize? So I don't know the prize. Oh, for the questions? Well, I'll throw chocolates at you. Thanks for that question in the chat box. Okay. And I like to know my audience when I'm doing a presentation. And to get started, I'd like to ask you a question, and you can type in a one or a few word response in the chat box, and I'll try to look at as many as I can. And I'd like to know what question or concerns do you have about resumes at this time? So take a moment, go into chat and type in any main questions you have about resumes, anything you hope we cover in today's presentation. I'd like to hear from you all. So I'll take a moment and I'll be looking at the chat box. Maybe just type in a word or a two, quick key question, anything that you'd like to be sure that we address. Somebody asked about applicant tracking systems and parsing. We will definitely talk about that. We'll talk about summary or the intro at the top. That's one of the first things we cover. What's the best format? We will talk about that. And when Jeff sends out a copy of this PowerPoint, he will also send out a sample format. How customized does your resume need to be? We will definitely talk about that. You should customize it for keywords every time you apply for a job. What is the best practice? To include industry-specific acronyms and buzzwords. The best practice for acronyms is always spell them out the first time, even though you think it may be fairly standard. Maybe not SAP, because I don't know what that stands for, but in most cases, spell out your acronyms. Okay, these are great questions. How can we get everyone to put their benefits or results or accomplishments into their resume? I'll provide a very specific example of how to do that, and a funny question you can ask yourself in order to get to that benefit or result. Relevant experience, if beyond 10 or 15 years, we'll talk about that. Great. How many pages? We'll talk about that. Great. We're going to address all the questions that you brought in. If you think of any more, you can definitely put them in the chat box. Excellent. Okay, I have a question here. I'm going to read it. It's a little longer. You meet the qualifications, but the job description doesn't match your past experience. Your resume then has difficulty speaking to the position. To meet the qualifications, well, then you need to customize your resume, or maybe rejigger it a little bit so it applies to that job, so it aligns to the job. I spend a lot of time as a career coach helping people align their resumes to jobs. And one thing I'll go ahead and announce, as a career coach and during these really challenging times during this pandemic, anybody who has a big challenge or a struggle with their career job search right now, I'm offering a free coaching session. So if you know of anybody who's struggling with an issue or needs something, I'm here as a career coach to serve. So I just wanted to let you know, especially during these very challenging times.
Carol?
And this particular question, yes.
Also, I'm watching the Facebook feed. Somebody, Veronica, asked you a question. How do you structure a resume if re-entering the workforce? So I don't know if you'll talk about that, but if we can.
Was that re-entering the workforce?
Yes, re-entering.
Yes, re-entering the workforce. One thing I've seen as a best practice is think of the things you have done maybe over the last few years. And sometimes I've seen people list community leadership and volunteer work or something, and list a few things that you've done. Like I would put the pit crew on mine or something like that. So that's one thought. And that's also something that we talk through with the career coach. Thank you, Jeff. And keep those, those in Facebook live. Keep feeding your questions to Jeff, and we'll get those addressed. Great. Okay. I'd like to share with you, since I've walked a mile in the footsteps of both agency recruiters and corporate recruiters, I really got to appreciate that role, because sometimes you'll hear, oh, just bypass that HR person or recruiter and just go straight to the hiring manager. And there are times when you can go straight to the hiring manager. And there are also benefits, and recruiters can be beneficial to you. They can be a great resource. For example, as an agency recruiter, when I would meet with candidates for the first time, we used to do it face-to-face, and now we're doing a lot virtually. as a recruiter, I can provide feedback about your resume or the job market. So if you ever do have a time to meet with an agency recruiter, I would say take up that opportunity and offer to meet over Skype or FaceTime or Zoom or however they want to meet, and take advantage of their knowledge of the job market. And also present yourself very well. And I'll share a little acronym that's known kind of in the industry, and that's MPC, Most Placeable Candidates. So if the recruiter detects that you've got great skills, great presentation and communication skills, they may think of you as an MPC, a Most Placeable Candidate. And as they're talking to their clients, they may mention your name. So it's good to get to know agency recruiters, get to know their feedback about their marketplace, get them to like you and your skills, because they can be advocates to you, to their clients. And I had a question, what is the Facebook page to watch live? Now I received that question, well, if you're in Zoom right now, you're seeing the presentation, so you probably don't need to switch over to Facebook page live. Jeff, are there instructions about the Facebook?
Yes, if you want to go to the Facebook page, if you're on Facebook, go to the group tab. You want to search for groups and search for Career DFW. And then when you're on the Career DFW group page, if you scroll down, you'll see the live feed.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Great. And then also from a corporate recruiter perspective, I've worked with and for and hired corporate recruiters. And again, that corporate recruiter can be your greatest advocate, because their job is to search on LinkedIn for candidates, look to see who has applied in the ATS, and they usually look at the people that have the highest matches. And that corporate recruiter then pulls maybe the top 5 to 8 resumes and presents those to the hiring manager. And then the hiring manager often picks who they want to interview. And I've seen situations where candidates have tried to reach out to the hiring manager, but if it's like the CFO or CTO, they're often too busy, or they'll just refer the message back to the HR director. So that doesn't always work. So you do want to make friends with your recruiter. So, and they can be a great resource for you and an advocate for you. And several people asked about applicant tracking systems. If you happen to know any names of applicant tracking systems, go ahead and type them in the chat box. Like an example is Taleo, and a lot of companies are going to big ERP, enterprise resource planning systems, that have an applicant tracking component to it, like Workday. And somebody just said Workday. Somebody said ICMS, that's another brass ring. Those are applicant tracking systems. And one thing that ATS systems do is they parse data. That's their method of reading data from a resume. They take out pieces like address, name, and different pieces, education, and put it in the database. That's what parsing is all about. So that when you're submitting your resume into the system, you may want to have a version for the ATS that doesn't have special characters that could goof up the reading or the parsing of that data. And then also some people just choose to, when they're entering their information into the ATS, go ahead and type it in manually. That's a personal choice to do that. And you want to be sure, if you're applying to a corporation and you've looked at their job description, to ensure that your resume does have a lot of the keywords in that job description. And a little later in this presentation, I'll show an example of how to do that. And somebody asked, what format will not mess up ATS parsing? And I did a little bit of research on that, and I did find that the standard bullet dot thing, that should not mess up applicant tracking systems. But if you use funny little stars or checkpoints or other little graphics, and then if you use lines and borders, that can goof it up. But the only safest little character is that little round bullet. And on the sample I show you, it may not even have the bullets in there. Thank you for that question. And then also you can attach, in fact, you should attach a resume as an attachment when you go into the ATS system. And you can either use your simple, clean, non-formatted ATS version, and some people have a little fancier version. Me, I don't like to keep two versions up to date, so I would go with one. But some people choose to have a version of the resume with no special characters, and some people like to have a version with maybe some underlines or boxes. And somebody made a suggestion, thank you, Mark, that headers and footers should be avoided also. Okay. And somebody asked a general question. If you're in the high-risk group for COVID-19, which I am, how much harder do you think the job search will be for us as far as being looked at? That's private information. That falls under HIPAA ruling. They cannot ask you if you're high risk. I think we're all at risk of catching that virus, and no matter what age group, you could end up sick. But 80% of people that catch the virus have minor symptoms. But hiring managers should not be asking you your medical history or if you're high risk. If there are any other HR people on the line and have anything else to add to that, feel free. And then also when you're entering your information into the applicant tracking system, you can add a cover letter. And I'll tell you a secret. I'll give you a confession. As a recruiter, when I would go through the list of 200 to 300 people that applied to the system and even the top 20% that matched the keywords, I never had time to click on the cover letters. I just looked at the resumes, so I never looked at them. But cover letters sometimes are a nice thing to do, especially if you're reaching out to somebody in your network and you're asking them to present your resume to a hiring manager. A cover letter can be a nice thing. And I just happen to have a little format that I like to do where you have a brief opening in your cover letter, and you want to make it easy for the reader to see that you meet the requirements. So it's good where possible, if the job description is kind of clear about the top 4 or 5 requirements, to list those 5 key requirements and a sentence or 2 about your experience. So that's one suggestion regarding cover letters. Before we dive into the full-blown resume format, and somebody asked about getting a copy of that cover letter file, and I will send that to you, Jeff, and so you can include that in the package that you share with everyone. And once again, before we talk about the resumes, I wanted to spend a moment talking about one-page biographies. And if you've ever used a one-page biography, I'm going to clear the participant list. Go into the participant list and click on yes if you've ever used or created a one-page executive bio, which looks different than a resume. As you can see, is the image on the screen. It's more of almost a marketing piece with key things about your experience. And I see a few people have executive bios. If you found it to be useful or had some benefits of it, go ahead and type something in the chat box if you found it useful to have an executive bio. And I'll go into my next screen and talk about the difference between executive bios and resumes. You know, resumes really kind of signal you're looking for a job because, you know, they lay out your whole job history. Whereas a bio is just more of information about yourself. It can be used for many situations. Like, for example, if I had a nice bio, I could have sent it to Jeff and he could have shared it as, here's Carol's bio. She's our speaker today. You know, it could be used for a variety of situations. Or if you're just out meeting with somebody or sitting with somebody at an airport bar, 6 feet apart, of course. But if you're sitting with somebody at an airport bar and they want to know more about your background because they might know somebody who has a job, you could hand them your bio. And the resume focuses on your entire work history, whereas a bio focuses more on your major accomplishments and expertise. And resumes are a job search tool. These bios could be used for multiple purposes. Resumes for almost anyone. These biographies, typically for senior level professionals and executives, but I've seen all levels of people. And I see some comments coming in. And then also somebody gave a shout out to Jack Bick, has a one-page selling resume that he helps people with. That's Jack Bick, who's also a wonderful career coach. And somebody has used it for informational interviews. That's very nice because it's a softer way of sharing your background rather than saying, Don't you have a job for me right now? Very good. Okay. Working. And here's a good question. Should bios be written in the third person, or should you say I? In general, yeah, I would say third person is best. And I recommend that also in resumes. Very good question. We've got a great audience out there asking good questions. So to get started, big picture talking about resumes, characteristics of good resumes. Really the overriding operating principle is the goal for your resume is to make it easy for the ATS system and also screeners, recruiters, and hiring managers to be able to determine that you're a good match for the job. That's really the overall purpose. And so therefore you want to make the formatting clean to make sure it's easy to read, because as a recruiter, I'd be looking at these resumes on the screen. Sometimes I'd take a quick look at the bottom to look at the education, quick look at the job history to see if the person jumped around a lot. And then I'd look at the top, maybe third of the resume, the summary section, and maybe the most recent job, make a decision in 10 minutes or 10 seconds, whether to move on or not. So you want to top load the top of your resume, and we'll show how to do that. Okay. Length of a resume. I'd like people to go into the chat box and type in a number. What do you think is a good length in terms of number of pages for a resume? Type in a number. And I'm seeing people are already, great audience here. I'm saying 1, 1 to 2, 3, 1 to 2, 1, 2. Okay, good answers. I think 2 is a great number. Sometimes it's hard to squeeze everything on one page. If you can, that's nice. And I've seen some resumes go to 3 pages, especially if somebody has a lot of education or publications or training that are useful. But I like to see a 2-page resume. The other day as a career coach, I got a resume that was 5 pages long. And there's a lot of wasted space. And so I'm going to be spending some time with them that I think they could really tighten it up. Because once again, recruiters are looking at these resumes online and making decisions within 10 seconds. And they don't want to be going through, I didn't want to go through 5 pages. Okay, I will ask the age-old question, how many numbers of years of experience should you show on your resume? Okay, there are 3 different options. The first option is what I did a year or so ago when I was applying for a job, and I was 60 years old, and I've been in the workforce for 36 years. My resume showed every bit of it all the way back to, it was actually 38 years, back to 1980, and I just shared everything. And the hiring manager, he kind of knew me, and he knew my background and knew I'd been around a while and worked at EDS a long time. So I just showed the whole thing. So that's one option. And that works, I think, even when you're above 50 or 55, especially if the person you're interviewing with knows your credentials. The other option is to chop it off at 10 or 15 years. And as a recruiter, I got a lot of candidates with resumes like that. And if I had a candidate come in and they would talk about all their experience, and I'd look at their resume and it only showed 10 years of experience, I would often ask them, just kind of out of curiosity, I would ask them, did you have jobs prior to this? And they would say, yes, but I was told to cut them off because it made me look old on my resume. And then when I would ask them interview questions, they would tell me about experiences at a company. And I'd say, wait, this isn't on your resume. And it would add confusion. It'd say, oh, that was a long time ago. I didn't put it there because I didn't want to make me look old. So there's pros and cons of chopping off the resume at 10 or 15 years. There's a third alternative, which I like, where you can focus on maybe the most recent 10 or 15 years and then add a section, and you would call that section, professional experience. Then you can add an additional section and call it previous relevant experience. And you can list the company names and your job titles for jobs that are relevant to what you're applying to. And you can put dates on those or not. You're just listing previous relevant experience. So if somebody asks you a question, tell me about a time you implemented a global leadership program and you happen to have done that in one of your previous jobs, you could say, oh, when I was at EDS, I implemented a program for 50,000 leaders. And that way it doesn't cause confusion for the interviewer. And I'm getting a couple of questions in the chat, so my eyes are going to the chat box. And somebody said they list all 30 years, but have more detail in their most recent job, which lasted 17 years. That's a great way of handling it. And what if greater than 10 years of experience makes the resume longer than 2 pages? What amount of information? That's why, you know, when you go more than 10 years, having that little section, you know, previous experience can be very short. It can be just the heading, previous experience. It can be just the company names and titles. Now, if you have 10 years of experience and it's going more than 2 pages, I'd say there's room to condense that. And I would say either work on condensing it yourself. And when we see the resume format, I'll give you kind of a limit to the number of bullets you should have per job. Maybe that'll help, or seek help from a peer that you trust, a mentor you trust, or a career coach. Okay, good questions. Okay. Now here's some guidance that I learned from the Professional Association of Resume Writers and Career Coaches when I got my certification. So I just thought I'd share these with you because they come from a reputable organization. They recommend that you make your resume easy to read, that it's free from spelling, punctuation, grammatical errors. When I worked as a recruiter, I would say at least 90% of resumes I looked at had some sort of error. Spelling, grammar, tense, verb tenses, that's bad. So you want to make sure you have carefully proofed, or have somebody you trust carefully proof your resume. Somebody says it gets too complicated, but it depends on the position. Okay. Yeah, things do get complicated. It's hard to make complicated things simple when you're writing a resume. Okay. Spell out acronyms the first time. One exception is SAP. Does anybody know what SAP stands for? If you do, write it in the chat box. Okay. You want to highlight skills related to the target job, and I'll show you a specific illustration on how to do that. And you should include qualitative and quantitative accomplishments. I'll show you a specific example of how to do that as well. Kind of a fun way to do that. And then no graphics or pictures or underlines or boxes or headers or footers in the version that you're submitting for the ATS. Oh, thank you very much. Bobby, you get the prize for the day. SAP is the initials for the founders of the firm. Thank you very much. I know it's a firm that was founded in Germany. Thank you. And somebody else wrote, Walt, thank you for this. Your resume is your example of written communication skills. You know, your resume is your example of your written communication skills. Excellent. Thank you. Now we're going to talk through key components of a typical resume. And you can probably think of other components as well, like the previous, relevant experience. But these are typical sections of a resume. And again, this format that I'm sharing is based on probably 15 years of getting feedback from hiring managers, looking at thousands of resumes, and also getting guidance from the organization where I got certified, and also by reading through the career transition workshop. And this workshop is given once a quarter in the Dallas area. Jeff, do you know how often this workshop is being done? And this is the career transition workshop, which is done approximately quarterly here in Dallas.
Let me unmute my mic. The next one was scheduled for May 1st. We're having a meeting, we're having a conference call. Obviously, May 1st is not going to happen. We're going to have a conference call at 12 o'clock today to talk about when the next one will be and how to, what we can be doing. So I'll have more information next week about that.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Excellent. Okay. So they have resume formats that are very similar to the one that I'm showing you today. And some people say, these formats, they've been around forever. And they're tried and true. And the main thing I found is hiring managers are comfortable with these. So that's one of the many reasons that I use this pretty simple format. Okay, so we'll start off with the heading where you have your name, phone number, email, LinkedIn address if you can. And I have a question for you. If you can go into the participant box, click yes or no for this question. Do you think you should include your physical, street address on the top of your resume? Click yes if you think you should, and no if you think you shouldn't. And thank you. Great audience here. People are participating. A lot of people are saying no. One person said yes. And actually, you don't need to include your physical street address. And in fact, I've heard one anecdotal story that there was actually a lawsuit relating to discrimination relating to a street address. So you don't need to, but it is good to list the city and the zip code, because sometimes recruiters search for zip codes if they have jobs in certain areas. Okay. So no physical address is needed. So you want to make it very easy to see at the top of the screen. And somebody asked about the summary profile section. This is my favorite part of a resume. I love helping people with this section. First of all, the profile is a statement of who you are as a professional, key skills that you bring that align to that job. And it is not an objective. A lot of times when I look at resumes and people ask me for help, instead of profile, I'll say objective. Seeking to find a company, a growing company where I can continue to grow my skills. No, you don't want to say that. That's talking about, you want to grow your skills. No, you want to come forward with a strong statement of who you are. And the example I'm using today is for a business analyst, which is a very common job that I thought everybody could relate to. But this profile is saying, I'm an innovative business analyst with a proven track record of documenting business requirements. And the words in here are actually kind of aligned to a particular job description. And then also, I like to see areas of expertise. Some people used to write skills or capabilities, but at the Pit Crew, we started talking about the word expertise. That's a strong word. It's stronger than experience, stronger than skills. I'm expert. I have expertise in these areas. And you want to pick out keywords that, again, align to the job that you're applying to. And Jeff, what's your favorite number of bullets under areas of expertise? Take yourself off mute for a second, Jeff.
Well, yep, no more than 9. And if we go in a Pit Crew interview and we ask you, what are your top 3? It better be the top 3 across the top or the top 3 on the left-hand side.
Yeah, thank you. We've had lots of discussions about that at the Pit Crew. And Alt makes a good suggestion. You may want to use the zip code of where you want to work. Yes, and it is kind of tricky. Like if you live in a suburb where people may not know the name, do you put the name of that suburb or Dallas area? If anybody has suggestions about that. And then Aaron says, yeah, it'll open up the amount of people that will find you in the areas you're willing to work. Yes. Okay, excellent. So again, the summary profile right there at the top of your resume. And you can see it's kind of short. Under the profile, I don't like to see those be 5 or 6 lines long. It should be 3 lines and then the 3x3 bullet thing. And so the recruiter can see right then, wow, this person's a match for this job. Does the areas of expertise get picked up by the ATS or just companies and positions? I don't know if it gets parsed into data fields, but the keywords do get recognized. If anybody else, and I know we have a few expert HR and recruiter type people out there, if you have any other answers to that question, do these areas of expertise get picked up by the ATS? Definitely as keywords they do, as words and terminology. Okay, excellent. And under professional experience, hiring managers and recruiters like to see chronological. I know there are other formats such as functional resumes, but people do want to see your job history. And as a recruiter, I'd look to see for gaps, and between jobs, and I'd look for longevity. So people do like to see that professional experience in a chronological order. It needs to be really easy to read with the, and I'm going to do something here real quick. do the annotate button. Okay. And put the dates out here, kind of right justified so they're real easy to read. You put the company name and your title in a place that's easy to read. And a few bullets, I usually say 5, maybe 5 max, 5 or 6 max, no more than 8. I've seen people list 20 or 25. I keep those short. Maybe in the most recent job, you might have 8 to 10, but keep that short. And also one very important point, make sure the verbs are parallel. And when I say parallel, I mean they're in the same tense. So for a job where you're presently working, what tense do you think you should use? Present or past? The present tense. And for previous job, it should all be in the past tense. Okay. And somebody likes to add reported to. Okay. And then somebody said, why do recruiters focus on gaps? Recruiters like to do that, and often there's a logical explanation, you know, downsizing, layoff, reorgs, very common. It does take time to find jobs, but recruiters do, the real world of recruiters, they do focus on that. But as long as you have a good logical explanation. And if you do have a gap for a long time, if you did some community leadership work, like volunteer work, it's good to fill in that gap. Or if you were going back to school. And then somebody said no description, just bullets under professional experience. As a recruiter, again, and hiring managers, we don't like to read very much. So if there's a long description, we may not read it. We kind of look for bullet points that start with a strong verb. Okay. And somebody said, should you put the company first or position title, highlight your position? I think whatever is comfortable for you. Okay. And then somebody said bullets that have dollar signs or percentage increase show results. Absolutely. And we'll talk about that. Okay. Excellent. Let's see. I'm going to clear all my drawings and move forward. Okay. I'm going to get out of annotate mode, I hope. There we go. Okay. And also in a little more detail, you know, talking about the bullet points and showing results. Again, within the job, kind of limit the number of bullets. And the bullets shouldn't read like a job description. You know, just I did this, did that. They should focus on results where possible. And I'll talk about an example. And this is actually a real example from a business analyst. I'm going to be looking at this third bullet here, where it does show a result that he reduced data migration time by 90%. And I'll tell you how we got there. The original text was, and I developed a Visual Basic program to automate the conversion and migration of data. And I read that and I said to him, so what? This is the question you can ask yourself. When you have a bullet point that says what you did, if you ask yourself, well, so what? What did that lead to? What was the result? What was the accomplishment? When you ask that question, it'll lead you to the accomplishment. So when I asked him, well, so what? You made this Visual Basic program. Well, he goes, well, it resulted in reducing the data migration, eliminated errors, and our stakeholders were more confident. And so we enhanced that bullet point by starting with the results, saying, reduced the data migration time, eliminated errors, and increased the stakeholder confidence by developing that Visual Basic program. So if you have bullet points in your resume, and you may not be able to do it on every single one, but do it on a few per job. Ask yourself, so what, to get to that result. So I learned that trick in writing proposals for the government through the Shipley method, that we're always trying to talk about the benefits. And that was a trick that we learned, and it really worked. And I have a question. What should you list for a company name if you were self-employed? I don't know if your self-employed company has a name. If anybody has a suggestion. It'd be good to put, like for me, career coaching, Carol Brickell Career Coaching, or, just have a name for your company, hopefully. Okay. All right. And many times as a recruiter and hiring manager, I would see somebody's resume and it looked like they had 5 different jobs. But actually, when I looked at it, I realized, oh, they had 5 different roles within a company, but they actually were at that job for 8 years or some amount of time. So the way they needed to illustrate it was by putting, the company name and put the total length of time they're at the company. And then for each role, put the time in parentheses that they had each role. Good. So hopefully that's clear on that. And then another important section for the resume is education and software skills, and list degrees. And if you went to college and didn't get a degree, don't put bachelor's, just put the name of the university and maybe the years that you went there. I have seen people accidentally, maybe they're in a bachelor's program, but they didn't complete it, but yet they put bachelor's on their resume. And that's false information, and you don't want to do that. So only put the name of the degree if you actually completed that degree. And then also the software skills list is important as well, and especially to be modified based on job requirements. And people, joke about whether you should list Word, Excel, but a lot of job descriptions do require that, so to get the keyword match. And some people, especially for more like accounting jobs, they'll put Microsoft Excel, including pivot tables and VLOOKUPs, because that's a real critical skill. Okay. And now here's my favorite slide. Aligning your resume to a job description. So what I did was I found a real live job description for a business analyst. And I went through this job description, and I'll verbally, in case it's hard to read, I'll verbally mention some of these key skills. And I will, if I can get this thing out of the way. Okay. The word innovative is up there somewhere. Okay. So what I did was I went through this job description and highlighted key skill requirements like innovative,
All right, we lost Carol for just a second here, so she'll be back joining us in just a second. Gary, can you please mute your microphone? If you can. Oh, let's see here. Maybe I can mute it now. Oh, hold on here. Mute. Okay, I muted it. Never mind. We were getting feedback. I know some of y'all were talking about that, so got that taken care of as soon as.
real world in the world of virtual presentations. So I texted Jeff and said, give everybody a 2-minute break if you want. Stretch.
We did the hokey pokey.
Okay, good, good. All right. So, Jeff, let's see. You may need to give me control again.
Okay, let me find you. Here we go.
Give me a host again. So that's real world. That's how you recover from real world. And that could happen to you in the middle of a job interview.
Okay, now the host.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's see. I'm going to do something here real quick. It's full screen, make sure my PowerPoint's up. Okay. Here we go. I'm going to share my PowerPoint. Hey, Jeff, can you see?
Yep, you're good. Education and software skills.
Okay, excellent. Okay. And I'm going to pull up the participant box again. So these things, these technical things do happen. And the main thing is to recover quickly. So hopefully I modeled that behavior and how to deal with disaster recovery. Give everybody a 2-minute break. All right. So we were talking about my favorite slide and aligning the keywords. And so I circled innovate. And then also another keyword is business requirements is a big one that we're looking for. Improve processes. I'm going to jump down here under what you'll bring. These are really the important requirements. They want somebody to have Agile and Visual Studio is another software. So I just highlight just a few here to show you, but then there's several others that I put in on with yellow highlighting as well. There we go. And then in the resume, see, I want to be sure that I've highlighted, that I've added these keywords. They were looking for innovative. You know, if I am truly innovative, I put that there. You know, business requirements, cross-functional, Agile was important to them. And also Visual Studio was important, among others. So that's what we mean by aligning your resume to the job description. Really go through and study what that job description looks like and highlight those keywords. And then honestly, you know, if you have those skills, highlight them on your resume, and especially in that summary section and in the areas of expertise. And if you do mention like Agile, then down in the body of your resume under the professional experience, you should include an example where you applied Agile. So hopefully that's a helpful illustration of how to modify your resume to align with the job description. Okay. And let's see, just trying to get the chat box back up. So I'm not seeing it right now. Let's see. Chat, there we go. I want to make sure I can see any questions that are coming in. She is back. Okay, thank you, Jeff. All right. And then, oh, what about using tools like JobScan to help with keyword and skill alignment? Thank you very much for asking that. And I actually had JobScan back on a previous slide. And I've had clients use that. It's jobscan.com or org. It might have a unique ending thing there, but it is a tool where you can upload a job description and your resume, and it will tell you how good of a match you have. And I had a client use that once. He thought he had aligned his resume really well to the job description, but it turned out he used slightly different language. When they were talking about project management, he was saying program management. So he ended up, aligning the language to be the same. Okay. And somebody said they went to a school that no longer exists. I would just keep the name of that. Like I worked for a company for 30 years that no longer exists, EDS, but I have it on. So I would just keep that name. That was a question from somebody. Okay. All right. So go back a slide real quick. Okay. So now we've talked to the resume. We've talked to all the major parts of the format of the resume. And now I wanted to add just one additional career coaching tip for you. Once you've got your resume, and then you're applying to jobs online, and hopefully you're also networking, because most people get jobs through networking to get really noticed. But if you do find yourself, and I do encourage you to apply to jobs online as well, if you do that, go into the participant box and click yes or no. When you apply for a job online, do you feel like your resume just goes into a dark hole? Type yes or no in the participant box, or click on yes or no. When you apply for a job online, you feel like you go into You never hear from anybody. I'm just seeing green check marks all across the board there. And that's absolutely true, because I've walked a mile, as a recruiter, and I've seen when I've posted a job, I will typically get 100, 200, maybe even 300 candidates. And even when I worked in a corporate setting and the ATS system was telling me my top 10, 20% candidates, sometimes that list would be 10, 20, 30 resumes. And as I was going through those resumes, even the ones that were the biggest match, after about 5, my phone would ring, I'd get distracted. I wouldn't have time to look at all those. So you have to do something to get yourself noticed. So if you apply for a job online, you need to take an additional step. One is, check through LinkedIn to see if you know any person in the company that can present you to the hiring manager or the director of recruiting or director of HR to get them to notice you. You can also, sometimes in LinkedIn, you can see who posted that job. You could send them a message, but even better yet, what I found as a recruiter really differentiated people is if somebody picked up the phone. And I have some favorite scenarios that happened. One time I posted a job, I was doing corporate recruiting, and it was actually a position for a campus recruiter. And I looked at that list, I had 150 applicants. Most of them weren't qualified. There were maybe 10 or 20 that met the qualifications, but I hadn't had time to go through all the resumes. And I was working on 10 different jobs, open jobs right now, and I didn't have time. And my phone rang, and the phone call was somebody saying, "Hi, my name's Lisa. I just applied for your campus recruiting position. I meet all of your requirements, and I've worked with the top 5 schools in Texas, and I'd love to come in for a conversation." And then I asked her just a few clarifying questions, and I said, "Come in tomorrow for an interview," and it turned out I hired her. What happened was, she took the initiative. Pick up that phone, not just hide behind text messaging or email, and she helped me do my job by telling me she met the requirements. So I thanked her for saving me hours of going through those resumes, and I ended up hiring her. And that has actually happened to me several times through my career. So when you apply for a job online, do something as a next step. Either network with somebody that can get your resume in front of somebody at that firm, send a message or call the recruiter that posted that job. And then your biggest question is, well, probably, what if you don't know who posted that job? Who do you call? What I recommend is look in LinkedIn for that company. Look for the leader of talent acquisition or recruiting. Or if they don't have one, maybe they just have an HR department. Look for the leader of HR. Call that person. Call that leader. If you call just any recruiter, they might be assigned to some other jobs and they'd be probably too busy to either listen to your voice message or take your call. But a leader would probably listen to that message, take that call, and get your information to the right recruiter. So those are my suggestions. And yes, Jeff, you're absolutely correct. The way to get to that person is to call just the main phone number. Like, let's say you find the manager of talent acquisition at that company, just call their main phone number, ask for Sam Smith, the manager of recruiting. The receptionist might say, what are you calling about? And you'll say, I'm following up on a job application. They'll put you right through and have your 10-second elevator pitch ready and either leave it on the voicemail, or if the person picks up, say, "Hi, I'm Carol. I just applied for your position. I meet all your requirements, especially blah, and blah. Be happy to come in for a conversation." And if you leave a voice message, leave your phone number, say it twice slowly, because nothing's more aggravating than trying to write down a phone number. So that's probably the biggest thing I learned when I retired in 2012 and went to work as a recruiter, that people that do take that extra step that stand out, I would usually hire that person. So that's my little extra tip of the day. Okay. Now we'll review what we've talked about and take any additional questions. I think I've been able to address, there's one question. How much do assessment tests they send factor in? Okay, assessment tests should not be used solely for hiring purposes. Other factors legally should be taken into consideration. A lot of companies are implementing these personality tests to see how aligned you are to the culture, to see how you'd fit in. But they should not be used as the sole determination of the hiring. So that's why your resume is important, but also even more importantly, your interview and how you answer their questions. When they ask you questions like, what do you know about us and about our culture? You better know about that company. You better know their mission statement, know their values, know their culture, and be able to explain how you align to the culture or aligns with your values, because they're going to be listening during that interview. And again, if you want to practice your interview skills, number one, the pit crew that Jeff has mentioned, Walt's program that he puts on is wonderful. And there's several coaches. Jack Bick and I also, serve as career coaches as well. That's something to practice. But companies should not be using those tests for the only way to select. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox on that. Okay. All right, good. That was a good question. It got me going. All right. And so in review, what we've talked today, what you need to know about recruiters. In short, recruiters could be your best advocate. So build good relationships with those recruiters and also get information from them. They know a lot about the job market. So make use of those contacts and then also make a good impression. Ask them if they have any clients that they're working with that you think you might be able to fit in. Maybe they could call those clients on your behalf. Okay. And then we talked about ATS systems, how they parse your data. And some people choose to have a simple resume without formatting, and then also a little fancier resume to hand out to people. I chose to do one to keep it simple, and but that's a personal choice. Talked about one-page bios and resumes that they're used for different purposes. And I've seen some people use them effectively for informational interviews or networking events or just meeting people in the public. And we talked about important characteristics of the good resume. Okay, here's a little pop quiz. What is the primary objective of your resume in terms of what is the primary goal for your resume? What do you want to have happen with your resume? Go ahead and type that into chat. What's the most important thing about a resume over anything else? A lot of people are saying to get an interview. There's a step prior to that, to get someone to call you. So what's the purpose? What do you want your resume to do or to show so that you get that phone call? If people are saying to get to the next step, to get noticed, but what do you need to do to your resume so that people do call you? It needs to show that you're qualified for the role. So the main purpose of your resume is to demonstrate you have the skills and experience to do that job. Then they'll call you. Make sure, oh good, somebody wrote down, make it easy for the ATS and screeners to determine you're a good match, good. And differentiate yourself from others that are applying. Yes, you're the most placeable candidate. So yeah, so you wanna make sure your resume shows you're the most qualified for the job, and then you're more likely to get called in for that resume. Okay, excellent. All right, and then we talked about guidance regarding the key components of a typical resume, talked about the heading, talked about the summary section, which is very important, and the professional experience in a chronological order. And we talked about education, soft skills, and then how to get noticed once you've applied. If you just apply and sit back, you probably won't get called for interviews. But if you take that extra step, either through networking or making some phone calls, reaching out to the recruiter or the manager of recruiting or the HR manager if you can't find the manager of recruiting. Okay, Mark, you have a good comment here. I'm wondering if you want to go off mute and share. You've got some good suggestions here. So Mark McDonald, if you
want. So we spend way too much time in the pit crew talking about tracking systems, applicant tracking systems. And so I learned this from Leon De Leon, who speaks at the Frisco Connect on a regular basis. And he's a recruiter for a long time, started his own company, recruiting company. But he talks about the difference between outside recruiters, corporate recruiters, and applicant tracking systems. And most of the jobs are actually filled by corporate recruiters, somewhere around 40%. And here's how they work. And as Carol mentioned in her example, they are way overworked. Okay, they have goals to hire people, and if they don't hire the right people, and usually it's just a numbers game, you know, they get moved on, do something else. We're going to get in a better recruiter. So they, by default, when they get a new posting, they will go to their first level connections. So this is people that they've met. And this is a very good reason why you should have conversations with them when you get a chance, even if they don't have an opening. And sometimes when recruiters have downtime, they'll actually reach out to you if you've called them, right? But if you get a chance to talk to them, you know, tell them what you do and what your skills are and what your abilities are. So they'll go to their people they've met that they know, maybe even they talk to at hiring events, you know, job fairs. Okay, second. So if they don't find anybody there, then they'll go to their second level connections. And I would often get emails from recruiters saying, I've just opened a position, XYZ, do you know anyone? So they're going to go to their employees and say, okay, do you know someone? Can you refer somebody to this job? Okay. So now if that doesn't work out, then they go to the ATS. Okay. And now they're going to do this search and they're going to pull it, you know, get 200 hits and they're going to have to sort through it. You know, it's getting to be drudgery at this point. Now, in my experience, after doing that, we would usually give the internal recruiter 2 to 3 weeks to find somebody. And if it was an important position, then we would go to an outside recruiter and pay the significant fee for them to find somebody for us. So just wanted to review that hierarchy.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you, Mark, for sharing that. Yeah, absolutely. That's another reason why it's good to have a good network with recruiters, because if something does pop open and they have you in their network, they may do a quick search. And then also I found as corporate recruiters and working with a lot of corporate recruiters, the first thing they would do is go into the ATS to see who's applied and see if there's any that do match. They do that really quick. It's like low-hanging fruit. And then they would start getting out into their LinkedIn network. But if they remember you as a kind of a most placeable candidate, yeah, they'll reach out to you. So excellent points, Mark. And I do find at the pit crew, we learn something every week. It's like you get a master's in interviewing every week. Excellent. Okay. And then here's our little statement at the bottom, that your goal with your resume is to make it easy for ATS systems and screeners. When I say screeners, I mean HR people and maybe sometimes hiring managers, to make it easy for them to determine you're a good match for the job. Okay. So now, Jeff, I'm through with the formal part of my presentation, and now I'll watch the chat here for a minute to see if there's any other questions.
Why don't you go ahead and stop the recording?
Yeah, the recording may have stopped when I hit the off button, maybe.
No, I paused it and then I restarted it again.
You're so smart. Great, good. Okay, what is your view? I have a question here in the chat. What is your view about trying to connect with a manager via LinkedIn, balanced again calling the manager directly? Okay, I'm assuming this is in relation to after you've applied to the job. I actually like the phone call thing. That causes people to stand out. But other people may have, and as a recruiter, I liked it if somebody called me, because that showed somebody was organized, they had good communication skills, they were on point. It's real easy just to send a message on LinkedIn. So I kind of like the phone call thing, but also some people are more comfortable, you know, connecting on LinkedIn. And if you do connect with that hiring manager or the HR or recruiting manager on LinkedIn, please put in a introduction saying, you know, who you are, why you're reaching out. You know, let them know that you just applied for their job and you meet the requirements would be happy to have a conversation. So that's my personal view. And once again, each coach you talk to, you'll get different opinions, and it's based on their experiences. My views are based on the experiences I've had receiving phone calls, receiving quick text messages. You know, sometimes I get quick little text messages with typos in them, or LinkedIn messages that aren't very professional. I mean, in terms of just not being written professionally, and those don't make a great impression. However you're communicating, you should do it very professionally. Are you seeing any other questions from our FaceTime folks?
No, nobody on Facebook's asked.
Facebook? Okay. All right. Well,
if you give me back control.
I'm sorry?
If you'll give me back control.
Okay, I'll give you back control. So I'd like to just thank everyone, and thank you for playing along with the interactivity. I thought you all did a good job, and at this point I'll stop sharing my screen and make Jeff a
share screen
host again.
All right. Okay, well, just as a reminder, next Friday, we'll talk about how to find target companies with Mike and Kip. I know Mike was on the call today, so he sort of saw how this does. I will practice with him this week, and we'll make sure he's up to snuff and doesn't turn off his computer. Oh, let me make sure. I need to stop. I think we're still recording. I guess maybe we're not. Okay, let's see here. For anybody who is brand new and you're not part of our Yahoo group, or you did not get an email from the Yahoo group, please send me your information. Send me your name, phone number, email address, and your area of expertise, so I can add you to the roster, which I'll do that today, and then I will send a copy of the roster along with this presentation. And the other, Carol, you want to send me one more thing to send out with everybody.
Yes, the cover letter template.
Or if you will email me at txjmorr@yahoo.com, I'll get you added in the next couple hours. Please do it in the next hour or two. I know somebody's already sent me an email about another group, networking group they know that's meeting online. If you happen to know anybody, I'd love to add it so we can share this to everybody. We will be back again next Friday. We will do this again every week. I think this was really great. We had, if you're just wondering, we had 57 people on Zoom and we had 9 people on Facebook. So I thought it worked out really well. Yes, Carol.
Yes, and I always like to get feedback about presentations, anything I could do to improve better, or things that were, specifically good. If we keep the chat open for a minute, and people could go in and type a chat, privately to Jeff or I, if you'd like, or send me a LinkedIn message. I'm always really like to receive feedback, especially things that I could add or improve.
Right. All right. And so what I want to try to do now, let's see here, go to the next slide here, is I'd like to try this and just sort of see how it works for a little bit. Maybe we'll try 10 or 15 people and just see if you'll give your 30-second introduction. Tell us what it is you do, why, what is it you love to do? Tell us 2 or 3 target companies in case we may be able to help you. And then be sure to end with your name again. I think that whoever talks, your face, if you're watching on if you're watching on Zoom, your face pops up over on the left-hand side or the right-hand side, and we can see who you are. So if somebody wants to, let me head down the list here. Arthur, do you want to tell us all about you?
Yes, my name is Arthur Williams, and I'm looking for a job in production management and CI. And as far as the target companies, one target company, I just only have one as far for right now, is Blunt Foods in McKinney, Texas. Again, my name is Arthur Williams.
Great, thank you very much. All right, Angela, do you want to tell us about you? I've got you unmuted, so you're ready to go. Angela, you're not ready?
Sorry about that, Jeff. No, I wasn't. It was, hold on. Okay, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay,
We can hear
sorry.
you.
Hi, sorry about that. Hi, I'm Angela Brown, and I love solving problems. I am looking for an operations role, and right now I'm looking at a Freddie Mac role, and I'm Angela Brown.
Great, thank you very much. How about Bruce? Bruce, do you want to go next? Bruce Weir.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. My name is Bruce Weir, and I'm an engineering manager. I lead cross-functional teams to complete new product development and sustaining engineering projects to achieve organic growth, reduce costs, and meet new customer or regulatory requirements. In addition, I'm also a Six Sigma Green Belt, so I lead continuous improvement projects to improve productivity for the company and increase customer satisfaction. My target company this week is CommScope. Again, my name is Bruce Weir.
Bruce, thank you very much. Let's see here. Let's go to Ernesto. Tell us about you.
Hi, everyone. Ernesto Weber, formerly, most recent position was a software engineer. Just re-entered the job search, so I'm still sort of feeling my way around, getting a feel for the how everything is going, and just seeing what my options are to pursue my next position. So, Ernesto Weber. And
for those of you who remember Ernesto, his great tagline is, he's the squasher of bugs. You got to keep using that. That's the way I'm going to always remember you. All right. How about Jermaine White? Tell us about you. Jermaine, hello. All right. How about we go to Jim Parker? Jim.
Morning. I'm Jim Parker, electrical engineer, and specializing in product management and technical sales. I prefer jobs where I wear a variety of hats. I'm good at working across departmental lines to make sure that things get done. I'm probably best suited for a small to medium-sized company, kind of company that has more jobs than people, if you know what I mean. I'm Jim Parker.
Great, thank you very much. All right, well, this little experiment sort of works here, so I think we'll definitely incorporate this next week and try to, get some people in there. Probably what I'll do next week to sort of make this work is on the participant list, you have a yes, no. One of the options is, I'll just have you click on yes, and then that's how I'll go through to call you if you've got target companies that you want to make sure you mention. So we'll try that again next week. All right, well, I want to thank everybody. Back up here next Friday, we'll talk about how to find target companies. Don't forget, Wednesday is April Fool's Day, so I expect to hear about a lot of April Fool's jokes since you'll be locked in with your family, and let's see what kind of jokes everybody can pull. So everybody have a great week. Thank you all very much, and have a good week.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Carol.
Thanks, Jeff and Carol.
How'd it go?
Hey, Jeff. Mark here.